The 2024 housing crisis, middle class on the brink. Middle-class families across the United States are teetering on the edge of homelessness. The American dream of home ownership is slipping away for millions. In major cities, over 60% of middle-class families now spend more than half their income on housing. This leaves little room for other necessities, let alone savings or emergencies. Families who once felt secure are now facing eviction notices and foreclosures. Teachers, nurses, firefighters, the very people who keep our communities running, can no longer afford to live in the areas they serve. It's a crisis that threatens not just individual families, but the very structure of our neighborhoods and cities. This housing crisis didn't happen overnight. Families who were managing just a year ago are now facing impossible choices. Do they pay the rent or buy food? Do they stay in their communities or uproot their lives in search of affordability? Skyrocketing housing costs, a nationwide phenomenon. The rise in housing costs across the nation has been nothing short of astronomical. Take San Francisco, for example. The median home price has surged to a staggering $1.8 million. Even in traditionally affordable cities like Austin, Texas, median home prices have crossed the $600,000 mark. Rent has become a crushing burden for many. In New York City, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has climbed to $4,000 per month. Even in mid-sized cities like Denver or Nashville, rents have increased by over 40% in the past 3 years. These increases are far outpacing wage growth, creating a widening gap between what people earn and what housing costs. Low interest rates in previous years led to a surge in demand. Supply chain issues and labour shortages have slowed new construction, and in many areas zoning laws restrict the building of multifamily units. The impact of these rising costs is felt across all sectors of society, but it's the middle class that's bearing the brunt. The American dream of home ownership is becoming just that, a dream increasingly out of reach for millions.
Section 5. Remote Work Revolution, Reshaping Housing Markets. The shift to remote work, accelerated by the pandemic and now a permanent fixture in many industries, has had a profound impact on housing markets in 2024. Cities that were once considered second-tier are now seeing an influx of remote workers, driving up prices in previously affordable areas. Take Boise, Idaho, for example. Once a relatively quiet city, it's now experiencing a housing boom. Remote workers from California and Washington, attracted by lower costs of living and a different lifestyle, have flocked to the area. The result? Home prices in Boise have doubled in just 4 years. This pattern is repeating itself across the country, from Asheville, North Carolina, to Bend, Oregon. What were once affordable havens for the middle class are rapidly becoming out of reach. In cities like San Francisco and New York, the exodus of some remote workers has led to a slight easing of rental prices in certain neighborhoods. However, this hasn't translated to increased affordability for the middle class. With more time spent at home, demand for larger spaces has increased. The remote work revolution, while offering flexibility for some, has added another layer of complexity to an already challenging housing market for the middle class.
Section 6. Policy responses too little, too late. As the housing crisis has intensified in 2024, policymakers at all levels of government have attempted to respond. But for many middle-class families, these efforts have felt like too little, too late. At the federal level, there have been attempts to increase funding for affordable housing programs. The Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program has seen a boost in funding, aimed at incentivizing the construction of more affordable units. But critics argue that these measures are a drop in the bucket compared to the scale of the problem. State and local governments have been more varied in their approaches. Some cities have implemented rent control measures, hoping to slow the rapid increase in housing costs. Others have relaxed zoning laws to allow for more dense housing development. In California, a state particularly hard hit by the housing crisis, legislation has been passed to allow homeowners to more easily build accessory dwelling units or granny flats on their properties. Despite these efforts, many middle-class families feel that policy responses have been inadequate. The pace of change in housing policy often lags far behind the rapidly evolving crisis.
Behind the statistics and policy debates are real people, middle-class families whose lives have been upended by the housing crisis of 2024. Take the Johnsons, a family of 4 from Seattle. Mark is a high school teacher, and Sarah works as a nurse. Just 3 years ago, they were comfortably renting a 3-bedroom apartment. Today, they're living in a friend's basement, unable to find affordable housing in the city where they both work. Their story is far from unique. In Miami, we meet the Rodriguez family. Carlos and Maria, both small business owners, saw their dream of homeownership slip away as prices in their neighborhood doubled in just 2 years. They're now facing the difficult decision of whether to uproot their children from their schools and community to move to a more affordable area. The stress is taking a toll on their health and their marriage. The middle class, once the embodiment of the American dream, is now living a nightmare of housing instability.
As housing costs in major urban centres have reached astronomical levels in 2024, we're witnessing a significant exodus of middle-class families from cities. This trend, which began as a trickle, has now become a flood. Families are leaving places like Los Angeles, New York and San Francisco in search of more affordable housing options. But this urban exodus is having far-reaching consequences, both for the cities left behind and the areas receiving this influx of new residents. Take the case of the greater Boston area. Once sleepy towns 50 miles outside the city are now seeing a surge in population. Places like Fitchburg and Leominster, previously known for their affordability, are now experiencing rapid price increases as city dwellers move in. This influx is changing the character of these towns, putting pressure on local services and creating tension between long-time residents and newcomers. The exodus isn't just to nearby suburbs. Some families are making even more dramatic moves. The urban exodus of 2024 is reshaping not just individual lives, but the very demographic makeup of regions across the country. One of the most controversial aspects of the 2024 housing crisis is the role played by large investors and corporations. In recent years, we've seen a dramatic increase in institutional investors buying up residential properties. Companies like Blackstone and Invitation Homes have amassed portfolios of tens of thousands of single-family homes. These homes are then rented out, often at prices that are out of reach for middle-class families. Critics argue that these companies are driving up prices, outbidding individual buyers and contributing to the shortage of affordable homes for purchase. In some neighborhoods, a significant percentage of homes are now owned by faceless LLCs rather than individual families. This can lead to a sense of transience and disconnection in once stable communities. Some localities have attempted to implement restrictions on corporate purchases of single-family homes. The role of investors and corporations in the housing market remains a key point of contention in the broader housing crisis debate. As we grapple with the housing crisis of 2024, it's clear that piecemeal solutions won't suffice. We need comprehensive strategies that address the root causes of the crisis. This means rethinking our approach to urban planning, investing in affordable housing, and ensuring that policies are in place to protect both renters and homeowners. The time for action is now, and it requires the collective effort of policymakers, communities and individuals to create a more stable and equitable housing market for all.